In this book called Get Us Out of Here, Nikki Eltz interviewed Maria Simma, who had received poor souls from purgatory for many decades. Today, we are reading about what the poor souls told her about the occult. You aren't going to want to miss this one. Maria, what can you tell me about the occult? She says, the word occult means hidden or in darkness, and is given to all practices that, recognized as such or not, are in communion with Satan. Today, there are far too many for any one person to list thoroughly. And every part of the world has different practices that, of course, have entirely different names. Satan is the expert disguise artist. But what is most powerful and destructive today is pure and simple evil within the huge number of people who curse others, send spells and enchantments upon others. Black magic in all its forms is rampant today like never before. Was it the effect upon people who are the targets of spiritual assaults? Or, excuse me, what is the effect upon people who are the targets of such spiritual assaults? Maria says, every such assault can at least cause confusion and fear, and just as often lead people into depression, oppression, agony, confusion, divorce, hate, demonic possession, and finally an agonizing death if they are not very well protected by a good life and by the protection of the angels as well as the poor souls. And for the people who practice in the occult, Maria, what will the effect be on them if they do not cease immediately? The effects of these contacts, whether conscious, ignorant, active, or passive, with any of these will be the same on them and will also run down upon the following generations. The effects of these sins will always run their course unless the people involved actively and persistently call upon Jesus, Mary, and St. Michael the Archangel to intercede and block the attacks from continuing. He then continues, what ought people do if they have been active in any of these practices and wish to stop now that you have said this? She says, first, stop it immediately and stop seeing anybody you've got to know through these practices, and do this without announcing it to anybody. Burn to ashes all materials that you have collected while participating in these practices. Just leave silently and then find safety among Christians. Once there, find a good and experienced priest or layman who has experience in these matters. Leaving silently is very important because if you announce it to anyone, the news of your potential conversion might very easily travel up the hierarchy in whatever system you've been, and if it arrives up there, they can and will attack you. In all these arrangements, there are witches or wizards who can and will attack you with the demons under their control. Maria, this sounds extreme. Well, Satan is extreme and will stop at nothing to hurt and discredit those who leave his clutches. Leave silently. Maria, do you know of cases where people trying to leave evil practices were harmed because they did not stay silent as you advise? Yes, I do. A name was brought to me once to find out whether this person was alive and then whether or not he had been murdered. The answers I received from the souls confirmed that he had been murdered because of this conversion. Unfortunately, he had not listened to the advice of Christians around him, the advice that they had given him not to return to his former surroundings. They somehow sensed that his earlier acquaintances had plenty to hide and would not be happy with a sudden and deep conversion. His neglecting this sound advice then did cost him his life. But then again, we were able to have him delivered very quickly, and he is now in heaven with Jesus. How else can witches and wizards hurt us? Oh, in endless ways. They can cause divorces. They can send illnesses upon people or burn houses down, leaving no slightest trace of the source. They can terrorize people at night. If there is enough power in, for instance, a group of covens, they can easily murder without ever leaving their houses. A priest in blank was murdered by them a while ago, and on top of it all, they were perverse enough to do it on Christmas Eve. They can listen in on conversations at great distances without any mechanical means and then later slander those listened in upon. They can cause car accidents, and they can do all of this at any distance. Yes, all they need is a name, an address, a photograph, or something like clothing from the person to proceed with their evil. Yet any negative results from black magic always have to be permitted by God. Good Christians have nothing to worry about, for if they stay humble, in a state of grace, and in prayer, then this protection is far stronger than anything that the demons can do. Maria, do black masses exist? Oh, yes, and more today than ever before in history. It is at these that they torture Jesus by doing horrendous things to consecrated hosts, innocent babies, and children. Babies are conceived and then born without birth certificates so that they can then do this to them. They also sacrifice virgins, have orgies, drink blood, and eat body parts to gain the power that is promised to them if they do. Satan stops at nothing. Many of these organizations will, after people have achieved on a particular level, tell them that they can never leave. This is a lie. One can always leave. Jesus even forgives people who have led black masses. Where in society do witches tend to concentrate? Well, that depends, but very often among children in schools, also in hospitals where blood and drugs are easily available, then inside churches and prayer groups to cause division, also among the police and legal profession so that they have insiders who can divert attention from the activities of the others. They are very well organized and at every level of society, often hiding behind entirely normal business suits and uniforms. They all seek as much power as at all possible. Maria, if someone suspects a witch, are there any particular traits to look for to confirm it? Well, they can only thrive on attention and will do anything to gain control over others. They often lack any spontaneity, for every move of theirs is planned in advance to fool someone. And when around churches, will show an exaggerated and thus false piety. They will brag about their religious and spiritual knowledge and abilities and often prove to be using a false name. But please, never, never let your suspicions be known and keep them entirely to yourself, for you will never know if your suspicions will be carried back to them. Plus, if you make your suspicions known, demons can warn them that you know what's going on. Go your own way in silence and pray for those people every day. Only prayer will free them, whereas our words about them will only end up hurting us. At least in the USA, there is a hot debate going on today between priests and lay counselors on one side saying that satanic ritual abuse is rampant, and another group that says that these stories are pure inventions being put into the minds of other highly suggestible patients. Do you have any thoughts on this? Satanic abuse of babies and children is definitely rampant today. I would carefully consider whether those who say it is an invention are not gaining themselves something. Why should they themselves not in some way be representing the very same people who are doing it? What do they gain by accusing those who are helping for having too much power, while at the same time making the victims feel that they are crazy? To say such stupidities and lies, they must be gaining something. Well, Maria, why would people choose to hurt others and choose to have more and more power? Well, it always starts with them initially being abused themselves, and then they seek more and more retribution and power over others. Both the paths to holiness and to hell are slow and steady progressions. All babies are born innocent, but not all babies are born unabused and in peace. The path to hell can often start well before the baby is born. If the parents fight, take drugs, practice the occult, watch horror movies, go to discos, or just sit in front of television all day and all night, The unborn baby receives everything they watch, hear, or participate in into its subconscious and is deeply affected by it all. It is no old wives' tale that pregnant women should not look at an ugly picture. In the days when that was still said, they were, of course, referring only to paintings and perhaps photographs. So just imagine what happens to the tiny babies who today are exposed hour after hour to the most detailed horror movies. Even unknowingly, people sin horribly upon their children today before they are even born. Maria, you say that the baby takes it all in from both parents, also from the father? Of course. The mother can be home with a tiny embryo inside of her while the father can be at the war in the Persian Gulf, and the baby experiences everything that he does. So suffering and reparation for that war has already begun at home, many miles away. Then if the father sins badly, for instance, by having sex outside of marriage during these 9 months, the child will very easily carry a subconscious wound resulting in resistance against the other sex, and then turn out homosexual. That is why so many of them honestly say that they were born this way. Their anger, pain, frustration, and lack of fulfillment are reparation for the sins of their parents. Satan makes people sick, and this illness, these wounds can only be healed with much prayer and especially with the help of St. Michael, who is the strongest to fight off Satan's temptations. Has a soul come to you during its life that during its life had participated in a black mass? Well, that has not happened yet, but please do not presume that they are in every case lost. I myself have known people who had participated in black masses, but then left and changed their whole lives. And so, of course, they are not lost. So there's no depth from which Jesus will or cannot pull us. Correct. If people want him to, God can always conquer Satan. It always comes down to our wish and to be and to do good deeds, and that even in the very last moments of our lives, God's mercy is huge. Maria, can lost souls do damage to living people? Yes, they attack people on earth and most especially their own families. Much of that is going on today. Some say that hell is nearly empty now because Satan's army is running all over the world. I work, pray, and go on pilgrimage quite often with an exorcist who has often blocked lost souls from attacking their descendants. That is one clear explanation for criminal families that certainly do exist. A lost grandfather with all the hate that he has within him will easily push his grandson into the same type of life. Only a strong exorcist can stop this chain from continuing. Jail will not stop it, and the death penalty will not either. For that matter, it probably more often than not ensures that the chain will continue. Maria, which of all the occult practices is the most dangerous for people to participate in? Freemasonry. It leads easily to divorce and finally to suicide. But then again, other occult involvements do too. However, the Freemasons' entire goal is to kill off the church. The poor souls have told me that our last Pope, John Paul I, was murdered, and it was the Freemasons who did it. And when a cardinal who had held a very important position had also died, a spiritually gifted woman in Corinthia wanted to pray for him. She prayed and was blocked. She tried repeatedly, but simply couldn't. One day, the same cardinal himself appeared to her in a fiery state and said, "You cannot pray for me because I am lost due to my Freemasonry, and I have popes on my conscience." Then she and her spiritual director, and it was he who came here and told me this, took this to the Vatican and again to the highest officials of the church. There, one of them, who acknowledged having been at the former one's deathbed, where he had witnessed piercing screams, said that he did not want to die like that and went to confess to the present Holy Father. Maria, you say that the Freemasons killed Pope John Paul I. Have other popes or other men high up in the church been murdered in recent times? Yes. And you believe this woman in Corinthia and her spiritual director? With no doubt at all. Can you tell me, Maria, how in most cases do you deal with Satan? When he bothers me, and usually it's with little things, I simply do this. Recently, I was sitting here praying the rosary, but for some reason had to leave the room. I hung the rosary on the chair like this and went outside. When I returned only a few minutes later, it was lying here on the table. Instead, it was hopelessly knotted up. I could not undo it. So I sternly said to Satan, "You stupid idiot, undo this rosary, or I will take 10 souls away from you." In front of my eyes, the rosary loosened itself, and I continued to pray on it. If anything happens that I discern as interference by him, I just command him in the name of Jesus Christ, the Lord, to depart, and he always does. One last question. Can you think of anything else that would strengthen our protection against evil these days? Yes. In the last decades, the exorcism prayer has been watered down, if not entirely left out of the baptismal rite. That too is a big mistake and leaves the door open for evil to affect the child more easily. This too is something where these modern times have led the priests astray. The exorcism prayer must remain there and in its entirety for full protection. Also, the prayer to St. Michael that used to be prayed at the end of every Mass must be reinstated. The lack of it today also drastically weakens the people's protection when they leave the church. I beg the priest to be courageous and trusting in St. Michael and to put this prayer back for greater protection for their parishes. Thank God my parish has put that prayer back. Join me for the next part when Maria talks about hell and Satan. I hope that this series is helping you to pray more intensely daily, have masses said for not only these souls in purgatory, but those souls in your family whose names you know and names you don't know. I hope this reading is helping you to intently pray for people you know that are dying now, that did die, and pray for them by name. Because they don't care if you show up to their funeral. They don't care if you say nice things about them. They don't care if you hang their picture up or name your child after them. All they care about is that you get them out of there. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks for watching yet another informational Bacon Bit. And as always, remember to live your life sunny side up.